So what happens is it's a forced exchange of the bishop for the bishop. But because my bishop is so good, this is exactly what you want to do. So like if I take and you take, this is very good because I no longer have any targets with my bishop. So I actually move my rook here so that if you try to make this forced exchange, I can move my bishop away and there's no longer a rook on the square.
I have to admit, man, I'm a bit nervous, man.
You shouldn't be. It's...
Getting a lesson from you, man. It's but I'm honored. Thank you so much for, you know.
Oh, no problem.
You know,
Well, it's an honor for me too. I've actually I did watch Game of Thrones quite a bit. I think a lot of people have. So just saying that you're interested in chess is amazing.
yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of chess, and it's a very interesting game. I like it. I've never really, uh, gone all into that game. I've just had some fun with friends, played there and there, but I feel like I'm gonna be at, on another level now after getting a class with you, though. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
So how'd you? I mean, before we start looking at actual chess, how'd you get into chess? Is it like through friends? Is it like as a kid you played it, or what's your background?
As a kid, my dad taught me chess,
Okay.
and then just from there, I might have just played a couple of times with my friends back on and off. Um, I I probably played chess, um, a few times a year.
Okay. That's yeah, that's
But
definitely. I mean, most people who are new to the game, it's usually a similar story where it's like one of their parents taught it to them, or they learned it in school. So it's quite relatable, and like even for me, like I learned from my parents as well. So everyone has to start somewhere.
but you've been, at what age did you start playing chess? Because you've been, great since you're quite young, right? You've
Yeah,
been a good
I
chess
started playing
player.
when I was 7 years old. So my first experience was when I was seven, but I improved very quickly because I played a lot of competitive chess tournaments immediately. So like I started at seven, and then I became a grandmaster at 15 years old. So in about 8 years, I went from 0 to 2,500 ranking points, and
Wow,
then I became a professional. Probably I would say around the age of 17 or 18 years old. So a couple of years after that.
that's that's awesome.
Right. So I
That's
actually I sent you an invite. I don't know
you
if you see it
should.
in your window. You should see it to a game board.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. All right. So if we're looking at chess, what do you know about the basics? Like in terms of the
I mean,
basics,
I
how you
mean,
try to start the game?
I can tell you what I know. I know the pawn can go one or two. Obviously, in the beginning, only two.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know if my pawn is here and you go two ahead, I can go on the sideways. I'm not sure what that's called, and I can kill him like that.
So
What is that called?
so actually, you can make moves on the board. So since I invited you to the board, you can actually make moves
Oh,
to show me
so
what you're saying.
let's say if I put my
Mm-hmm.
pawn up here, um, I mean I know the horse can go on the sides like this,
Right.
one forward or one
Mm-hmm.
side and then forward. The bishops can go, on the sides. He obviously can't jump over a guy.
Right.
The queen can go on the sides forward. I basically know all the moves. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay, so I guess what I want to explain is when you start out the game is beyond knowing the moves. The first basic rule you want to understand is getting your pieces developed. So like bringing your knight and your bishop out. So for example, let's say I start with a pawn push.
yeah.
Normally, player you want to take space in the central part of the board. So much of the game in chess revolves around these two lines, where your queen and king are, and all the squares on these lines. So normally you want to try and take space in the center with your pawns.
Okay.
So, for example, have you seen this opening setup before?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so what would your response be to this move?
If I was the black one, if you would do this, I would probably, you know, my first, I don't know. I would either move my horse here or just like this.
Right. Okay. Actually, you can flip the board, by the way, so you see it from the right perspective. So you can click that. You see right where it says black. There's a little like circle thing. It's
Left.
like over to the left, right next to analysis
Left.
board, but up at the top there's a little
Left.
circle.
Yeah. This
It's over to the right. So you see how there's a circle like wheel? It looks like a wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the bottom one. Actually, you don't want to click it. So just hit cancel.
Oh, cancel. Yeah. Oh, the bottom. Oh, here. Okay, great. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you hit that rotate. Yeah, exactly. So you can see it from the black side as well, not just from the white side. So, all right. So normally what you want to do at the start of the game is develop your pieces and castle your king. Do you know what castling is?
No.
No. Okay. All right. So I'll give you an example of the way a normal game would start. So here, let's say we push the pawns and I move my knight out. One of the things you want to think about is you want to have a basic idea to bring your pieces out. But you also have to be aware of your opponent's strategy as well at the same time. So in this situation, when you look at where my knight is my knight creating a threat?
He is creating a threat to this pawn, yeah?
Right. So now, normally the way you want to do this is you want to bring your knights and your bishops out first. So is there a way you can protect this pawn here?
Move this one to here.
Yes, very good, very good. And now if I capture the pawn, you capture the knight right back.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you're aware of the values, but basically pawns are worth 1 point. Knights and bishops are worth 3. Rooks are worth 5.
Yep.
And then the queen is worth 9.
Okay. Yeah.
So basically, if I give up the knight for 1 pawn, this is a very bad trade because I gave up a knight which is worth 3 for a pawn which is worth 1. So I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So normally, the way that I want to continue developing would be to bring this bishop out.
Mm-hmm.
And
in this situation, I could, bring my bishop out.
Mm-hmm.
I could do
right
this.
now, actually, this is an important thing. So, several people who I've helped with learning chess. One thing that they do very often is they try to bring the bishop out here. But one thing that you want to be aware of is normally the idea at the start of the game is to get all of these pieces off their original squares.
Okay.
So now, when I push this pawn, do you see a difference between our bishops here? Besides being on different squares, but is there some difference?
This bishop is in front of my pawn, which is gonna be not good position for me because I want to push forward with this pawn here.
Right, and so exactly, because basically I want to bring my bishop out, but you can't bring your bishop out because this pawn is in the way of your bishop.
Well, I could put this pawn up, but maybe that's not as a good move. You wanna, like you said, these 2 pawns, I want to push them forward, right?
Right. So also, like, one thing as well is that normally you want to put protection on this pawn. So like if you think about putting the bishop when we get this, you have perfect protection of your pawns. You're very strong in the center part of the board.
Mm-hmm.
And then your bishop can also develop. So then I guess the thing is, castling here is where the king goes over 2 squares and the rook goes over 2 squares.
Mm-hmm.
And once you get this king out of the center of the board, you then want to develop the other side of your position. So here, let's say you bring this knight. I bring my knight. And what's your next move? Right, exactly. And so now that you have developed all of these pieces off of this side of the board, you try to bring the other pieces as well into the game that you haven't developed here. So let's just say I play the move like this. How do you bring your piece into the game? Yeah. And okay, do you know what this is called, this concept?
Yeah, I'm putting a double threat basically. You would probably, I don't know what it's called, but I know this is an okay move by me.
Right.
You would probably put your pawn here to threaten my bishop. And then I would maybe go back or sacrifice my bishop to kill your knight.
Right.
And then you would open your queen setup here, which I believe is not a good position for you. Is that correct?
That's correct. So basically, when you get this bishop lined up like this is what we call like a pin. So basically, if I ever move this knight out of the way, you just take the queen,
Yeah, of course.
and then you're way ahead. So like this is very dangerous because I can't ever move this knight. And if I push the pawn and you go back, let's just say I play another move like I'll just play a move like this. Is there a way that you can take advantage now? Because you don't want to capture, because then I'll just take your bishop with my queen. But is there a move that you can make to maybe try and put more pressure on this knight?
I mean, I can see in a quick way I could put more pressure by putting my knight up here.
Right, and when I capture a knight,
I kill the queen.
yeah, no, you're you're quite good at chess, actually. This is very good
Well,
start.
thank you. That's a huge compliment coming from you, my friend. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, this is very good. So actually, since you already know some of the very basics, I think we should just actually play a game and go through some of the themes to keep going, because you know a lot more than my chat had told me you did. So you actually played quite a bit then. It's not just like once randomly.
I played a little bit, but I'm obviously nowhere, Yeah,
But
I
you're not a total beginner though, for sure. This is very clear.
I know how to move the guys. Let's
Yeah.
say that,
Okay. All right. So let's play a game then.
Okay, I'm excited. Okay, so I start on the white. There's a time limit. Holy shit! Okay.
Well, if there's an issue with the time, we can add more time to the clock, so it's not a problem. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, this is a reasonable move, but normally you don't want to bring the bishop out if there isn't a piece in front of it, because when you do this, I can actually just kick the bishop back with my pawn, and now you've helped me get an extra developing move.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's actually that's funny when I put that bishop there. I agree. Okay. So right now this is quite annoying move because let's say if I put my bishop back here, you could put your pawn here, and that's just annoying for me. Like I'm stuck.
Right. So actually, since we've put our pawns in this, you see your pawns in front of your queen and your king, the two pawns that are together. I also have the pawns on the same squares with my king and queen as well.
Yeah.
So normally when you put pawns like this, the way that where you want to put the bishop is put the bishop where I'm going to put my bishop, because you could have put your bishop on the mirror square, on the light square as well. And the reason is because now my bishop is eyeing your pawn. So when you castle your king out of the center of the board, my bishop is really aiming for that pawn next to where your king will be next move.
Okay. This is actually a lot of fun. I'm actually really enjoying this. I'm learning a lot, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I'm trying to explain stuff. Obviously, like, maybe you don't know the English word, but like, for example, the pin and the castle, you do know the word. I think it's just you know it in Icelandic as opposed to in English. So
yes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, so now I will move my knight.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, this basically at this point you want to try and you either need to play in the center or you want to like bring your queen or your rook into the game. So this is a good move. So now that you've castled your king, you developed your bishops and you got your rook in. Think about it like now that you've finished the opening stage, which pieces do you need to still bring into the game?
So I need basically my queen, which is the only move I can do is to move it here.
Right. This is very good. And now, if it's what would your next move be normally to
My
bring the one
next
last horse into
move,
the game?
to bring my this here.
Mm-hmm.
What do you call it again?
It's called the rook. Castle is fine too, but yeah.
Yeah.
So you want to bring that also to the central part of the board. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So here I will go. Here. Hmm? Good move. Very good move. Attacking this bishop.
Hmm.
Okay. So now this move is actually not the best move because what happens here is you're trying to push this pawn in the center part of the board, but you have to be aware of how many pieces protect this pawn. So if you count the knight and the rook, you have two defenders of the pawn.
Mm-hmm. This is.
But now count the number of defenders that I have. I also have a knight and a rook.
Three. You have three.
Right, so it's 3 as opposed to 2.
Mm-hmm. So you're gonna. Yeah.
Very good. This is very, very good. So you're threatening to make a checkmate here with the queen and the bishop.
Well, don't just pretend you don't see it, okay?
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
Yeah. Make me look good, man.
You've played very well. Like you made one very slight mistake so far in the game, but in general, the principles like trying to use this bishop and the queen to make the checkmate is very, very good. And you've also you've brought your rook into the game as well, and now your other bishop is pretty well placed too.
Mm-hmm. In this situation, I honestly don't know like how it's.
Yeah, it's a tough position because this one pawn, I'm really trying to capture it here with my queen and my bishop.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm?
Not the big mistake.
Yeah, this kind of loses the rook here because I can capture it in the center of the board. Um,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, so one thing actually, this is another general thing, is when you put a bishop on the side, when you have a bishop on the side of the board, you always want to be aware of what squares the bishop can move to. So this bishop on this light square, it's not really attacking this pawn on this diagonal, right? Like my pawn in front of it is completely protected. If you see that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So like normally the bishop, if it doesn't have an attack on this diagonal, normally it's better placed on a different diagonal if you have the opportunity. So like in this case, what I can do is I can push this pawn, and your bishop's getting trapped here because it no longer can go back to that square and attack towards my king.
Yep.
So most of the time when you have a bishop on the side of the board, if it's not attacking on that line, that diagonal, you normally want to put it on another diagonal to try and create more ideas.
Okay. I should have probably, if I want to move this pawn, I should have put it up too.
Yes.
Then this bishop would have been protecting this pawn, and I could have also moved it. So this move by this pawn was actually a huge mistake, like a few other mistakes I made.
Right. So this is a general thing, is when you have the bishop on the side of the board like this, be aware of if your opponent's pawns can attack your bishop, and make sure you always have an extra square available for your bishop.
All right. So now, well, now it's my turn, and my best option here would choose to this. This is a bad move as well.
It's already very difficult to play here.
Yeah.
Right, and so now this is checkmate because my bishop protects both of the squares. So let me actually pull up the game again, and this way I can.
Yeah.
1 second.
You're a great teacher as well.
Oh, thank you.
Learning a lot.
Appreciate it.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so I think you should see the board again. I sent you another invitation. Okay, so right, so so d4, knight f6, knight f3. Actually, yeah, you should see it in the bottom right hand corner. You can click it. Oh, did another game accidentally get started?
I think so. I just clicked.
Okay,
accept.
that's fine.
I might have. Okay.
Okay, so now you see it, right?
Game?
Now I'm making the moves. You see moves on the board?
Yes. Yep,
okay.
Yep.
Okay, so right, and you're looking at it from the white perspective. Good. Okay. All right. So in this opening, the way you played, so you pushed the pawn, and then you developed a knight, and then I pushed my pawn. So this fourth move, this position is really the critical start of the game. Your opening setup is very consistent. I like it. You developed a knight. You bring the pawns out. But when you put the pawns in this, like, I don't know what you'd call it, this formation. But when you have these three pawns like this, normally you want to develop your bishop behind the pawns. So normally you want to put the bishop here because now it's very well protected with the pawns in front of it, but it has an open line towards this pawn here.
My first mistake in this game was when I moved my bishop to c5.
It's b5, but yes.
Uh,
But it's not
it's
not a
B5,
big
B5, yeah.
mistake. It's not a big mistake at all. It's a completely reasonable move. But the main thing is that when you create this, you put your pawns like this, like these you have these 3 pawns. You always want to put the bishop behind the pawns because it's very well supported with the pawns in front of it. For example, when you make this check, I push the pawn, and now I start attacking your bishop. So like when you go back, I can start using my pawns to really attack this bishop and force it to make a lot of moves. Whereas when you put the bishop here, even if I push this pawn, you can always push this pawn here, and the bishop is very, very safe with all these pawns around it. And also, most of the time, not always, but you should be thinking about where your opponent is going to move their king, because normally you develop the pieces and then get your king out of the center. And most of the time, you're going to be castling this way over to the right. Unless I move my bishop and we both castle, you'll notice that your bishop here, it's got a very nice straight line down towards my king. So this is the first thing, is when you make this basic setup, you want to put your bishop on the square that it has the most attacking possibilities. And here the bishop from very far away is keeping an eye down towards where my king is going to end up eventually. So you played this, I blocked, and then you went here. And actually, the good thing is, since we have the same pawns, I essentially played the plan that I would show you that you would play with white, because you'll notice that my bishop is now behind these pawns. So castles, we castle. Now you play here, and so when you look at this position, my bishop is very good, and your bishop is kind of off on the side of the board, right?
Yeah, this bishop does nothing good for me basically, but yours is very strong.
Exactly. So that's why when you put the pawns here, you want the bishop on a square where it's attacking. Whereas here, this diagonal, you'll see like the bishop is just not. There's no actual threat. Like you can never capture this pawn because I just take your bishop. So what that means is that normally you're going to have to put the bishop on a better diagonal to attack. But if you move the bishop back here, it's not really attacking still, because I have a bunch of pawns here. So there's no way the bishop is getting to my king.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
Does that make some sense?
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Definitely,
It's a little bit advanced. Like it's just a general thing with like when you have the bishops, you want it on a square where it's attacking.
The strongest position for the bishop would be here.
Yeah, it would be on this square. Yeah, because you would be able to attack towards where my king is. So you brought the knight out. Now I move my knight. You developed a good move again. And now I played here. You moved your rook. And now I push my pawn. And again, the reason that this game turns out so much better for me is it's only because of the bishops. It's only because where your bishop is versus my bishop attacks.
Yeah, well, I think the reason why it turned out better for you because you were a little bit lucky. I was unlucky.
Yeah. Well, yeah. For now. For now. Yeah.
Just you had some luck.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like when we go forward in this game, you'll see again, like my bishop, it's very well in the center here. It attacks everything, and this bishop here, it just doesn't attack. So the problem is that basically with my bishop, I can really create a lot of attacking ideas very quickly with this bishop being on this good square.
Yeah.
So the most important thing is like when you set up with your pawns like this, you want to put the bishop behind. Now, for example, let's say I were to bring this knight to this square. Now, if you move the bishop here, it's actually not such a bad move because you're attacking a piece of equal value in the knight. And you don't mind trading the bishop for one knight. But normally, if there's no piece that the bishop is attacking, you generally try to put it on a square where it has the most sort of targets, where it can attack in the most directions from. Okay, so I guess let's try another one, and I think this time I'll
try another one.
Play with white.
Yep, I'm excited. Let's do it. So, how is it for you? Like, do you train X amount a day when you play chess, or are you just do you have to train, or how does that work? Like for you, I mean, are you still competing? Like. Yeah,
so I still do compete in tournaments. Let me figure out which opening. I'll play this one. I do compete quite a bit in tournaments still. Obviously, what's going on with COVID, right now there are no tournaments. But normally, when you're at the highest levels of the game, much of the focus is on the opening phase, the first 10 to 15 moves. So we spend a lot of time looking at the opening setups. Like on move one, for example, the move that you played is one of probably about 6 different moves that Black can reply with to this pawn push in front of the king. So normally
Hmm.
we're looking at all these different opening setups that our opponents can do, and we're trying to find some inaccuracies or some moves that aren't the absolute best moves that they play and to take advantage of it. So every day I am looking at some opening strategies, but the vast majority is this opening phase of the game because you try to get the advantage, because if you get the advantage, then your opponent is going to have a very difficult time playing the position because they're already worse at the very start.
Do you feel like if you don't practice and play, you like, or do you do you get worse, or are you just always as good? How does that work for you?
Yeah,
Do you
I
have to
think.
practice?
Mhm. I think if I in terms of like playing against other grandmasters, I think I could take probably a couple of months off and I would still be as good as most of them. But at the absolute elite level, I would suffer because they're studying chess every day and I'm not. So if I'm competing against the other elite players, I would have to study every day because they're studying every day, and they would get ahead. The knowledge that they're picking up, it's increasing, whereas the knowledge that I have, I'm not really going forward. I'm not increasing the knowledge in the openings. Oops. Oh, I didn't mean to do that, but anyway, I clicked the pawn. Okay, so I made a mistake.
Whoa, bam! I'm 2 points over you now. That's
Yeah,
great.
it's
Good
a
for
good
me.
start. Yeah.
Good start for me. And now just I have to make sure there are no mistakes. Let's see. Attacking the pawn. This is okay. Oh, move this one here.
So in general, I would say like for competitive, if I'm playing against other grandmasters, there isn't. If I took a while off, it wouldn't affect me. If I'm trying to compete against the absolute best, and I were to stop for a month or two, I would not be competitive. I'd still be competitive, but they would beat me consistently. So you have to kind of keep working, keep studying.
When is the next big tournament?
I don't know because of what's going on, but I would guess maybe in October there might be a tournament in like Paris, for example, or the United States Chess Championship, something along these lines. But it's going to be quite a few months still.
Okay, okay. And do you prepare yourself like for X amount of time before a big show? Do you take 2 months, 3 months, or even longer or less? Or how's that work for you?
Right. So normally, the way it works is there's a set schedule for the tournament in terms of how long it lasts. Some tournaments may go 5 days, others will go 2 weeks. So
Wow.
based on the length of the tournaments, it really determines the schedule. So the tournaments that go 2 weeks, you play one game a day, and the games can go up to about 7 hours. So you play like
Wow.
10 or 11 games against 10 other competitors, and it goes 2 weeks. So when you're playing in those sorts of tournaments, a lot of the preparation you do, both mental and physical, it's before the event. Because when you're playing a 7 hour game every single day, and then the next day if you come back and play, the brain at some point, you can't remember things, it starts shutting off. So a lot of the preparation will be done in advance, maybe like 3 weeks to a month before the tournament. And then if there are certain mistakes that you're making in some of the games, in between the rounds, you try to fix it.
Hmm. I guess I guess sleep is super important for you, um, because your mind has to be on point, for.
Yeah, I think sleep is very important, but also it's very tough because things don't always go your way in the tournament. So if you start off a tournament and you lose a couple of games at the very beginning, like let's say the first 2 games you play, you lose both games. It's very hard mentally because your brain is racing. You're really upset with your performance, and so I find actually during tournaments I tend to sleep worse because the mind is always racing. You're thinking about what if or what you could have done in this game because every match is so important towards the final rankings. But sleep
Yeah.
is important, but it's not easy. It's not easy to sleep well during the major competitions.
I bet, I bet. Even though, I mean, you've been competitive now for 2 decades.
Not quite, but probably I would say a little over one day, probably like 12 years, I would say. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. But you've been good since you were 10.
Yeah, yeah. Pretty much, yes. So I mean, I've
Mhm.
spent most of my life playing, and I think though it changes because when you're young and you're playing, you're trying to achieve your goal, you're trying to play the game and make a career out of it. It's more like it's fun, like you're enjoying the learning process, discovering all these different strategies and all these different things. Whereas once it becomes a job, like you start thinking about making money, you start worrying about the result more than just like enjoying the game purely as a game. But yeah, I've been playing for a very long time now. I'm
Awesome.
curious though, like when you talk about sleep or these sorts of things, do you have the same sort of like issues, or like before one of these competitions of yours, is it one of those things where you're thinking about all the different things?
Yeah, I just try to stay super consistent with my sleep diet. Diet plays a huge role in strength and sleep. You know,
Mm-hmm.
sleep diet. If those two things are on point, the recovery is going well, and if the recovery is going well, it means you can train um, even harder, and you will recover better, so you can train more. So I mean, it all hold hands. So you just have to stay consistent and make sure that you're getting your 8 hours of sleep at least, getting the right nutrition in your body so you can recover. And I just think about all these small things. I try to do physical therapy. Um, and I work with nutrition coach, and I have a specific coach for just my programming. So everything just has to stay on point. How is it for you? Like,
Yeah.
do you have a coach?
So like when it comes to like the chess part of it, I do have a coach, somebody who works with me. We use computers and we look at the opening strategies and so forth. So I do have a coach, but for the other stuff, it's much harder because like with these with my competitions, the I guess what I would say is that they tend to be in a lot of very different places in the world. So keeping a routine or a set schedule is very hard because I live in America, but most of the competitions tend to be in Europe. So just
Mm.
keeping like even a sleep schedule is very difficult because of the time zone change. So when I try to go from like flying to Europe and there's a 5 or 6 hour time differential, getting on the time zone tends to be very difficult at first. So it takes quite a while for that. And then secondly, because the competitions tend to be in different locations, nutrition is generally not the same across the board. For example, if I play a tournament in like Reykjavik, for example, I can find everything that I want to find in a supermarket. But if I play, say, a competition in Moscow, it's a little bit different. There's certain things that you're not going to find as easily. So because of that, it's quite difficult to keep the same routine with every single competition since every country and every place is different.
Yeah. Is like are there more competitors in Europe?
Mhm.
Why is there more competition in Europe than, for example, in America? Or
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So I think like when you look at the competitions, because chess has been very popular in Europe for a long time, probably in like the modern day chess, the origins of it basically can be traced back to Italy and France specifically. And so because the game was developed there in the 17, 1800s and 1900s, there's a much longer culture of chess than there is in America. So for
Mhm.
that reason, I think it's just been more a part of the culture than it's been in America, since it's been around for the last like 500 years in Europe, and therefore you have more sponsors, you have more organizers. There's just generally more interest in the game than there has been in America.
Okay, okay. Hmm.
But what I would say in general, like in terms of like competitors, there are players who are getting very good in every single country now because with the internet and technology, kids can learn the game. You can just get on the internet and study the game of chess so much more easily now than you could have in the past. Like in the past, you had to have access to books, like going to the library and all these different things. But now, because of the internet, if any child wherever they are in the world can learn the game, just on the internet, and through that they learn much more quickly. So you have kids getting very good at the game of chess just all across the world. It's not like say Russia or the former Soviet Union, which used to have the absolute best players in the world. Now you have players getting good in countries like India and China, or Iran. You just have kids learning the game so much more quickly than they used to, and because of that, it shows that the game is very universal. It's not you have to be in this place or that place. It's just people are getting good across the world. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Let me see. Okay, push with your king.
This is a good move. Very good move. You're playing this game quite well. I mean, your rook development perhaps off on the side wasn't the ideal approach, but other than that, most of what you've done this game has been very, very good.
Okay, thank you, man. Have you competed? I heard you mentioned Reykjavik. Have you competed there before?
Yeah, I
Really?
played a tournament there I think it was in 2003, many years ago. I think I was maybe like 17 years old at the time, but I did play an open tournament there. Yeah, it was a very nice city. I enjoyed it a lot.
Awesome.
And actually, I think even now, obviously there was the whole crisis and everything, so some of the sponsors went away. But I think they started the tournament up last year again, in Reykjavik. So there is a tournament that they have there. I believe it's every March.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Are there? I just have to admit, I'm not like I like chess, but I'm a busy man. I haven't been following up a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
Do you probably know it more than me? Are there any like great chess players now from Iceland? I honestly don't
Um,
know.
I mean, not say elite players who compete against the absolute best, but there are probably, I would say, at least like 5 to 10 grandmasters in Iceland who are probably, I would say, probably around like 150th in the world or so. There are quite a
Okay,
few, and there are some who are very famous from the time of Bobby Fischer as well. So there are some grandmasters in Iceland. Yeah.
that's awesome.
So I'm curious. So obviously you've been competing. You're the world's strongest man, but you've been doing some acting. So I'm kind of curious. Is it sort of a transition or something you're doing as well? How do you sort of balance all these different things?
Mm, I just try to stay consistent, and I try to plan things. Uh, it's been rough. I have to admit, especially when I was doing Game of Thrones with Strowman, because I tend to when I do one thing, I'm very focused. Um,
Right.
um, how do I manage that? Just you know, have a schedule. I guess it's yeah. I mean, you're a very intelligent man. I bet that you could easily do that. Do acting plus being the best chess player in the world.
I've done some cameos, so I am kind of in that thing, in that sort of stuff a little bit. But yeah, I was just kind of curious because one thing like is like when you go, I think filming was where in Croatia, right? Or was it?
I filmed in Croatia, Belfast City, and Spain a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, so I was kind of curious. Like, I assume with training like lifting and all this stuff, you have to do it almost every day, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm in the gym almost every day. What was most difficult for me was basically finding good strongman gyms when I was traveling. Um, for for filming, because it's not easy to find, good stratagems around the world.
Hmm.
That's the most difficult part.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was wondering. Like, 'cause it's got to be difficult when you have to
Mm.
travel. So it makes sense. No, I mean, I mean, I don't really do lifting per se, but even for me, it's like I do a lot of running, and some of these locations for chess tournaments, they're not
Mhm.
good for that at all. So it's like trying to stay in shape during some of these chess tournaments it can be challenging when you just want to get away and not do the whole mental thing.
Yeah. Hmm.
Oh, and by the way, one fact since my chat told me is apparently Iceland has the highest per capita of they have the highest grandmasters per capita in the world at the game of chess.
Oh, that's awesome. That's pretty cool. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. This is. Let's see. Um, I'm having a rough time here.
Yeah, so basically, because you brought this rook, you lift it. You did a rook lift.
Yeah,
The rook is
I
kind of
should, I should not have done it. I should have kept it here and pushed it here.
yeah.
Um,
You normally want to bring the rook to center rather than trying to bring it out on the side of the board.
mm, hmm.
It's good, very good. You saw the threat that I was trying to do here.
Hmm.
Hmm? So now what you want to do since we don't have the queens on the board and since you only have a couple of pieces is try to figure out ways that you can the ways that you can try to attack the weaknesses that I have. So if you look at the position that I have right now, I've got these pawns on all these light squares in the middle that you can maybe try to attack because everything else is very very protected.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
the two things is see if you can attack, and then secondly, if you look at where your knights, your bishops, and your rook are, if any of these pieces can be on better squares. Mm-hmm. Very good. I wasn't sure if you'd see this idea, but yeah, this is a great move because now you attack both the rook and the pawn.
Bam. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Decided to trade because the bishop is not worth as much as.
Right, and this is good. A rook is worth more than one bishop, so this is you you're happy with this.
Yes, I'm happy. I'm happy, guys. Woohoo! Let's do this. Let's see. Like you can see, I'm actually trying here. I'm actually super
You're doing very
focused.
well.
I'm actually trying, you know. Um, hmm.
Hmm? Very good. Very good. So now you don't have a way to protect this pawn here, right? My rook is going to capture the pawn.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess here you want to look to see again, can you attack any of my forces, or can you maybe put your knights and your rook on the better squares?
Yep, yep, yep. Well, this one, I don't want to move him here. I don't want to move him. Well, mm, mm. I honestly, I'm having a hard time. I'm wondering if I should put my knight here. It doesn't really do anything for me.
Right. So
It's
you
it's
actually
weak.
have.
I want to have this
Mhm.
open here for this guy for the so I kind of feel like I wanna just move my pawn or something. I honestly don't know.
So one thing that you want to think about is like, so if you look at your rook here, it's not really attacking. It looks really nice because it's on this open line down towards where this pawn and where my king are, but it's not really. It can't really attack anything here, and you don't have any forces that can sort of support any attacking there. So normally when you have a rook like this, you want to try and put it on one of the other open lines if you can attack something. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And so now the last thing or another thing that I would add here is also, so you have a rook on a very good square. It attacks this pawn, which is why I brought my rook back to protect this pawn. So now what you want to do is your one advantage is that you have two knights and I have one bishop. So you're ahead. You're ahead by I think 2 points right now.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to do is try to use those knights and bring them to better squares to attack maybe my pawns or my rook or my bishop. And if you look at this knight on this light square, it looks really good, but this my one pawn actually prevents the knight from coming to the center of the board because you can't move this knight to this dark square, this f4 square. So
Mm-hmm.
what you want to do at this point is try to bring the knights to better squares because you're ahead, but your knights aren't doing anything right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. Well, best option would to.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually quite challenging game when you don't find the moves you want to make. And
Right, and this is one of the hard things here is because you have the knights. Like this is where, since we're in this end game where there only are a couple. You have two knights and a rook, and I have a rook and a bishop.
yeah,
A lot of the plans here are conceptual. So it's like you have to look at squares and where you want to like kind of put the pieces down the road instead of in one, on one turn. So think about this. So right now, ooh, okay, that's it's not a bad move. Why'd you push this pawn?
so I can have more freedom with this knight.
Yes, very good. So actually, here, I mean, it's a free pawn, so it's not necessarily the best move, but the idea behind it, I do like.
Okay.
Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So this move is, I mean, do you see a problem with this move, perhaps?
You're gonna kill my pawn. Um, I was just thinking about my knight moving him, killing this pawn. I'm
Right.
a little bit afraid of these two pawns, so I
Yeah.
want to get rid of them. But maybe
One of
that's
the
not
issues here is my
the
bishop from
smartest move.
distance
And
kind of attacks this
I
pawn
want to
still.
move. I want to move this knight
Hmm.
more into the game. I feel like he's a little bit stuck here. Yeah, so you're gonna go forward, which is not a great move for me. Um, but I can do this.
Okay. Right. So now I'll do this. Ask him about his boxing match. I could ask Chad. I totally could. I mean, I'm actually gonna offer him a draw in a couple of moves,
Let me
but I want to see if he
see.
can spot the idea here. Good thinking. Good thinking. I don't want to die either, you guys. Don't want to die.
Why did I do that?
Yeah. So now
Yeah,
there's a slight problem,
it
but
is.
I'll.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. This is a bad move by me. But yeah. So basically, you were nice to me here, so I'm gonna go back. I feel like I can't stop this, but
Right. Hmm. Very good. Very good. You saw that. That's good. So you see, do you see what I'm trying to do here?
I with the king.
Yeah, so basically, when you look at the position, one thing I have here is this bishop. Because your pawns are on the same color as my bishop, I can actually attack the pawns with the bishop, and I want to bring my king over to attack your knight.
Oh, I see. So you want to kill this pawn here.
Right.
Oh, draw. You wanna
Sure, yeah. Sure, I just figured out offer draw here, decline the draw.
Let's do it. Yeah, guys, did you guys see that? Holy shit. Well, this is great. You want a rematch?
Sure, I just want to show you like two quick things from this game.
Okay.
First, just very quickly, 1 second.
Okay.
Just pull it up. Just give me 1 second.
Woo! What game, guys. I'm excited.
So yeah, I think I sent you the invites. I just wanted to go over like two quick things.
Okay.
So yeah, okay. So you see the moves, right? So just the first main point was like in a position like this, when you finish your development, almost always the way you want to bring the rook into the game is towards the center. So like here, moving the queen, and let's just say I move my knight. You bring your rook here because the rook is much better attacking on these open lines like here or on this one, as opposed to say, it's funny because it's called like lifting the rook basically, but when you do this rook lift, even if you get your rook to the square, it doesn't really attack anything because the bishop is always guarding the pawn, and in fact the rook becomes a big target here because I can just attack your rook with the bishop. So almost always when you're trying to develop your rooks, the way that you want to do that is towards the center of the board rather than kind of on the side and lifting them. It's just much easier to use the rooks because also when you get like a rook here, I can't really attack the rooks. Whereas when you end up in this position, I can just very easily target and attack your rook. So that's why that's the first thing is normally when you're looking for the final development with your rooks, you bring them to the center of the board. And then just two other basic things. The other thing I was going to say is that very oftentimes when you're trying to use your knights, you need to be aware of where your opponent's pawns are in relation to the knights. So right here, you have this knight on the side of the board. But my pawn kind of dominates the knight because the knight can't ever come back towards the center to attack any of the pieces. So most of the time, you don't want your knights on the side of the board, because with just a pawn or a couple of pawns, I can take away all the squares that you want for your knight to go to.
I see, yeah.
And the one last thing, whoops, sorry. The one last thing is, let me just go to this position. So we reached this position, and if you look at the position here, you have 2 knights and I have 1 bishop. So you're ahead by the material count, but your knights don't really have squares. This is same principle where my pawns kind of, you want to bring these knights to any of these squares, but the pawns control all the squares that the knights can go to. So
Yeah,
you don't want to move a knight.
This pawn here was my biggest trouble.
Yeah, these 2 pawns, one in front of the other, are an issue, and then this pawn over where my rook is as well. So the way that you approach something like this, where the pawns control all the squares, but you're ahead in the material count, since you're +2, I think right now. Yeah, you're +2. Is you have to think more like long term, because without like queens or open lines, like your king here is very safe, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So your king here is very safe, so I can't really attack towards where your king is right now. So you basically have a lot of time to kind of figure out a long-term idea, and you want to bring these knights into the game. So the way that you would do this would be, first you bring the rook over here to attack this pawn.
Yep.
So now I can't really, if I push this pawn, you just capture the pawn, and when I take the pawn, you just take back. So that would be terrible for me.
Yep.
So what I would probably do is I'd push the pawn to protect the pawns. But now what happens is I've had to create some squares. So I'm curious if you can find this, if you can move the knights around and get a knight to what we would call, let me give you an example here. Let me just make a couple of random moves. So you see how here you have this knight on the side of the board? This is what's called an outpost, because it can't be removed. I have no pawns that I can push to remove the knight, and it's just going to stay here forever. Whereas, let me go back. So let's say, what's an example? Well, let me just put the knight here again, just so you can conceptualize it. You see how there's a pawn here that can attack the knight? Whereas in this position, I have no way to remove this knight. It's going to stay here forever, because it's guarded by this pawn. I can't remove it. I can maybe bring a bishop in exchange, but I can't get rid of the knight. So if we go back to this position, in this position, can you try to see a square where you can maybe get a knight where you have that same situation where the knight is protected by something, it can't ever be removed?
To here?
So you can make a move on the board.
I just made the move.
Oh, I didn't actually see it. Let me see. Oh, you played here, right? So this is a move, but is the did you see my move on the board?
Yep.
Okay. So why did I put the knight on this square? Where do I want to put this knight?
I have no clue.
So I said before, let me show you this position again. You see how there's a pawn that protects this knight and can't be removed?
Yep.
So now if we go back to this position, let me just make just a random move. Can you get the knight to the same kind of square where it's supported? So I want you to use this knight on the light square, this one in behind.
When you say supported, what do you mean? By the pawn?
Yeah. So okay, let's just look at this position one more time. Okay, so you see how this knight is supported by the pawn?
Yep.
The knight can't be removed because the pawn always protects the knight here. And I have no pawns. Like if I could put a pawn on the square next to it, I could attack the knight. But I can't remove this knight because it's supported by the pawn forever. And likewise, I'll give you another example. Let's say we get some position like this. This is also it's also an outpost because it's supported by 2 pawns, and my pawns are already advanced, so I can't push the knight back with my pawns.
Yep.
So when we look at this position, is there somewhere that you can move your knight to get that same kind of the pawn just anchors the knight on a certain square?
I mean, I could. There's no pawn that would protect my this knight here.
Right. So in this position, when you brought the knight back, it's because you're starting to look towards the other side of the board. So you're not
Uh,
looking towards where your king is. You're
so
looking at the other side.
I would go here.
Right. And let's just say I make a move like this. You could do that, but actually the right move would be to bring the knight here, because the knight is anchored by the pawn.
Mm.
So you see how my pawns here, they can't ever attack this knight.
Yeah.
And my bishop is on the dark squares, so the bishop can never attack the knight either. So because you have this pawn here behind, it supports the knight for the rest of the game. The knight can never be removed from the square. So that's why this is considered an outpost, because where the knight is, it can just the knight can move if you want to move it, but it can never be removed from that square. So it's a little bit advanced trying to explain that, but basically the way that you would have you would win the game if you were a grandmaster is to basically just bring the rook over and maneuver the knights and use them on these light squares, because then I can never remove them, and then eventually you'll trade them down. Whereas in the game, if you see what happens, basically I end up getting these pawns and they're rolling up the board. So here the pawns are rolling up the board, whereas in the other position, once you get to like this position, the pawns are stuck. They're actually not rolling up the board anymore. They end up getting what you would call blockaded as well, because you need the two pawns marching in tandem to keep supporting each other as they go towards the end of the board. Because let me just show you. So like when I get this position, the pawns just keep marching and they keep supporting each other going all the way to the end of the board.
Yep.
So that was just the last little thing. I mean, this is already like pretty advanced. Like, this is not simple stuff. Which, I mean, it shows how good you are at the game of chess that I'm talking to you about an end game. Like most people, even in this tournament on Twitch, who are playing, they would not make it to an end game against me. So you're definitely quite good at chess.
Well, thank you. That's I'm honored that you say that. So appreciate that.
Yeah, the fact that I'm explaining these sorts of concepts, like, this is not basic beginner stuff. So yeah. So you want to do one more?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
I would love to.
Sure.
I would love to. I feel like I'm already learning, you know. So I feel like each game we play, I feel like I'm gonna.
Yeah, I think with where you're at, if you just do a couple of games, the improvement should be pretty quick. Okay, now I'll play a different setup this time. Okay. E-Rob will be killed by Thor in chess and IRL. He's not bad. I put push to talk on for a second just so I can respond to you guys.
Hello, are you?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, well, you're still here. You're just talking to your chat. Okay.
Yeah. I just did push to talk for a second.
Okay. All right, no worries. All right.
Yeah. Okay, so now you have to be aware, because of the setup I've played. I'm attacking your center really quickly. Okay, very good. So actually, considering all this going on, you're getting into streaming now. Is something that you're going to be doing for as long as we're in this current environment?
Yeah, I mean, I started because I had more free time. I wasn't traveling as much, and competitions were postponed, and so I had more time on my hand, and that was the reason why I started streaming, and I actually do enjoy it.
Oh, it's great.
I'm meeting people like you, which is awesome. And I actually like it. Yeah.
Oh, that's great to hear. Yeah, I think certainly for me as well. Like when I came from something so different, like not really doing this, now doing it all the time. I think it's a great way to interact with all the fans. And I think I mean pretty much everybody, probably everybody on Twitch, it's like 90% plus has seen Game of Thrones. So I think you're gonna have a lot of fun. And there are gonna be a lot of people who enjoy watching you stream.
Thank you. Have you been streaming for a long time?
I've been streaming more or less for the last year and a half about, but certainly it's picked up in the last couple of months because again, there are no competitions. There's nothing else really to do. So I just try to stream as much as I can and communicate with the fans.
Hmm. Awesome. That's great. I have the same situation where I have these two pawns here that really
Right.
annoy me. I
Again,
feel like
yeah, this is one thing that
I
generally
feel
you want to try to avoid is getting these two pawns, one in front of the other. It's very difficult to play with them because they don't support each other and they actually become just targets.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, all right, I'll bring my rooks to the center here.
All right.
Yeah, you're definitely out of the people that I've given lessons to or helped. You're definitely in that top tier. I would say you're probably there probably are a couple of people who took lessons and played a lot as children, but after that you're definitely in that next group. So it's
Oh
you're
wow.
one of the best
Thank
ones
you.
that I've seen.
Really, thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. That's a great compliment coming from you.
Yeah, I think I'm because most of the people who tend to be not good at chess, but people who have sort of played the game and competed as children, they tend to be the best ones amongst the streamers that I've seen. And you never played competitions, right?
No.
Right. So it's clear that you've played quite a bit against your friends and you've looked at the
Mhm.
game even a little bit. So this yeah you're definitely you're not a complete beginner. It's you're one of those one of the best ones that I've seen so far. You've
Wow.
good potential. Good potential. And I
Thank
think if
you.
you just
Thank you.
play games here and there and just try to pick up some of these little concepts, you'll have a lot of fun. And you should be better than
Mhm.
most of the people you're playing against as well.
Awesome. Let's see. I'm trying to figure this out here. Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, this is a tough position because it's very hard. There aren't really straight ideas, and this is why normally I would say when you're playing, try to play games where you keep the queens on the board because the ideas when you reach positions without queens become a lot more difficult to understand. It's based on like seeing a couple moves ahead and sort of conceptualizing what your idea is instead of the straightforward like one or two move ideas.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. Okay. Oh, good move. Good move.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, even in my chat, by the way, people are impressed by how good you are at chess. Because I think usually when most people say they like chess, you're never really sure what the level is unless they've actually competed. They tend to be really new, so my chat is very impressed by your
Oh
playing.
wow,
They are like, it's not just me saying that, they actually they are impressed as well. Just,
that's great. That's awesome. Awesome to hear.
so you mentioned before that you played with your father. I'm assuming that after that you probably at some point kind of not forgot about the game, but it was just one of those things that kind of went by the wayside. So I'm curious, like, what got you back into chess, or what was it, just like the people that you train with?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I have a chessboard here at home, and then I have a chessboard also at my gym. A lot of my friends they like to play chess just for fun,
Mm-hmm.
and so I honestly might play with them,
Wow. Okay. What do you like the
something.
most about chess?
Um, just the game itself, I like the competitive side, That I guess you're just competing against. I just love competing and
Mm-hmm.
that I'm competing against someone, and I want to win that person, I
Right.
guess.
Right. Yeah. Of
And
course.
it's a fascinating game. I really enjoy the game, yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's great to hear. So,
Yeah, because you just have to stay so focused. You have to make sure you do no mistakes. You can so easily make if you play too fast, you can so easily just make one mistake. So there's a lot of things you have to think about at the same time. To think about what your opponent's going to do, what you're going to do, and even um, few plays ahead. So it's I don't know. When I play it, it feels good in my head as well. So that's
mhm.
what I like as well.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. That's fantastic. I'm curious, do you face like stereotypes or things because of, I mean, like, obviously when people think of chess, they think of something mental, and I mean, you're the world's strongest man and it's something that's completely different. And obviously, in society, people tend to view it differently. So, do you face like stereotypes or things like that because of how, I mean, you're how big you are, like just how strong you are?
Uh, what do you mean by stereotype?
Well, I just mean like people tend to think of people who are like, they think that people who are really big in muscle and bodybuilding, things like this, probably aren't smart per se.
Oh yeah. Um, do I?
Have you had to deal with that much, or is it just that it's not really an issue in general?
No, I haven't. I haven't had to deal with that really. No, not me at least.
Okay,
You
that's
know,
good. That's very good. Yeah.
or I might just ignore it. If it is there, I try to ignore all the negativity around me.
Hmm.
There's always some negativity around
Yeah, it's true.
people that are in the spotlight.
Hmm.
But what I try to do is just to ignore it, think about the positive thing, because you can't control other people what other people say, what they think about you.
Right.
Uh,
Definitely. Yeah. I know
you,
that too. Yeah.
yeah. So you just have to like, um, if you're gonna worry about what other people say about you when you're in the spotlight, then you're never gonna be happy.
Mhm.
So you have to just like ignore that and just be thankful for what you have. Be thankful for the people you have around you. I'm actually super thankful for the people that I have around me. I have a great support system, great family, great friends. And I always tend to like think about them when I have negative publicity or media, or even if media it wouldn't surprise me if media would say Hafthor is bad at chess, because media likes to talk about negativity.
Uh-huh.
And I have two options, and that's to be like, oh, people are gonna think I'm dumb, that's so awful, or just okay, great, it's a free publicity. Um, if they want to say this, that's okay. I'm gonna ignore it. I know I have awesome people around me. I'm a happy man. I'm blessed with the things I have, and just try to stay positive. Don't
Oh.
don't try to control things you can't control. Basically.
That's great. I mean, I try to do that as much as I can, because obviously, again, in something competitive, I think there are a lot of people in my world as well. They can be very critical about me at times, and I try to ignore it as best I can. So it's great to hear that you have that positive
Mhm.
mindset.
Yeah, I mean you have to. I mean, I bet. I mean, when you're at the top of your game, when you're, for example, you're one of the best chess players in the world, and if you do one mistake, the media and the people are going to say, "What's happening? Is he going down? This and this." Come on, we're all human. We're going to make mistakes. It's just when you're in the spotlight, people like to talk a lot,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very true.
and that's how it is. We just have to be thankful for what we have, thankful for, you know, um,
Yeah, I mean,
you
all the people
know,
who support us, all yeah, basically, there's the yeah,
yeah.
you
Look,
know
look at
you're
all
you,
these
you know you've
all.
been successful, so you're gonna. I mean, just have to have
Look
that
at look at
attitude.
look at all these people watching you right now. These are all people that love you and support you.
True. Yeah.
And
Good
so this
point.
is just, we're in, we can't compare. This is just, and there's always going to be negativity. We just have to
Hmm.
stay focused, focus on ourselves.
Right. So actually, I'm curious. If there is another chess tournament on Twitch, would you be open to competing in it?
Oof. If you promise me one thing, if you are willing to train me for it, because I'm competitive and I want to do good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
I
you'd already
know, I
be.
know,
Uh huh.
I know. I'm asking for a lot, and you're probably busy. But if you just get to pick your brain a little bit more, I'll be very
Mm-hmm.
thankful.
Yeah. 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 So that would be a yes if I that would be a yes if I can if I do more training with you. Most
Yeah,
likely.
how
I'm not, I'm
much?
not. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but just like, yeah, that'd
how
be
like
amazing.
how do these tournaments work? Like how much of a time does that take?
Yeah. So like the way it's the actually maybe make a move first, and so that your time doesn't run out in this game. And then I'll
Yeah,
just talk
yeah,
on
yeah.
my time. Yeah. So the way it's working right now is I think they're playing. You play. They have four groups of four players. So you
Mm.
play three games against all the people in your group, and then there's just a knockout stage with eight players. So eight becomes four, and then two, and then one. So it's I think the total number of games maybe would be like 10 games at most, and the games are pretty quick like this. So it's so I would say in terms of time, it's probably maybe like 4 hours, 5 hours max if you go the whole way and you win the whole event. So it's not something that's super long.
Okay, okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool. How many hours do you think? It's hard to protect, I guess. Depends on how many.
Yeah, I mean, some people have been crazy about it, and they put in maybe like probably 5 to 10 hours of training. But based on where you're at, I think you already have a very good grasp of the fundamentals. So it's more just simply playing some chess, just learning more and seeing more of the ideas in the actual positions, and then looking at some of the opening strategies. Because the only thing that you're not doing very well right now is the opening strategy. It's just the first like 5 to 10 moves. You don't have a set strategy and a set approach. But based on the fact that you're saying you try to be so consistent, when it comes to when it comes to lifting and just the whole nutrition, the training, the regiment, Something like chess, I think you would actually really enjoy it because it would be very set. Like you're trying to play a set strategy to get to a certain point in the game, and as long as you're consistent and you're able to remember the strategy and get there, you'll have some success. So it's very
Okay,
similar.
awesome. Yeah. When is the next tournament?
It's not set yet, but but probably I would say maybe I don't know, like in a month or two. It's not set up yet, but there probably will be another one down the road. So I'll definitely let you know, and if you're interested, and you
Yeah,
want to compete, and for
for
sure.
sure. I'd be. I'd probably enjoy that. You know,
Yeah.
I'm a very competitive guy, so.
Yeah, and you're already very good at chess, so you definitely be one of the favorites.
Really? Wow,
Yeah.
wow, really?
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
awesome.
Because what I would say is most. I mean, I guess the way that I would classify is you're still relatively new to the game, but there's certain sort of pattern recognitions like which some of the people who are relatively new they don't see the patterns in the same kind of way. Like you're losing these games to me, but the way you're losing is not indicative of someone who just started playing chess. You're losing sort of more advanced strategies, or you're losing because you have some pawns that are kind of set up in the wrong way, as opposed to say losing your queen at the very start of the game.
Okay.
That's how I can kind of tell that you're good at it, is because the way you're losing is not the way that a beginner would lose to me. They would lose their queen or lose their rook immediately, and you're not doing
Oh.
that. You're losing a more like a longer game, and somewhere in the middle part of it, you make some small mistakes, but you're not actually just giving up a queen or giving up a rook and making these straight mistakes that people who are
Hmm.
very new to the game do. So it's very good, because that's one of the first things that happens is people who are newer, they don't see the patterns and they just hang a knight, or they give up the queen, and you're not doing that.
Hmm. Well, okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, that was a mistake for me. Okay. Well, I keep doing these mistakes here. That's true. Um, I guess you won this match. Can I give you this, or how can I?
You can just click resign. There's a resign button with the flag. I think you can see it. Yeah,
Where is it?
it's right below the moves. There's a draw and a resign right above that. Right above that. So you see
Can you
your
see it?
last move, King D6, and then right below it says draw with a half point, and then there's a flag with resign.
That's Hérna. Ah,
Yeah, so it's right there. Yeah, so I mean, like the reason that you lost this game, actually we can just go over this one. Just pull it up. Was because of something, and this game, I'll invite you 1 second. Okay. Is there an invite, or yeah, there it is. Okay.
Yes, it's here. Yeah.
Okay, so this opening that you played, you push your pawn 2 squares, and this time, like I said, there are many different replies. I pushed my pawn ahead 1 square. And normally when this occurs, what you want to do is you want to take as much space in the center as you can. And the way you would do that is you would push this pawn 2 squares forward. So this is very similar, actually, to I think the first game, where you brought the knight, I pushed, and then you pushed the pawn. Now, the problem with pushing the pawn here is now your bishop doesn't have space. This light bishop. It's stuck behind the pawns.
Yep.
So what you normally want to do here against this push is you would push your pawn in the center.
Okay.
And normally I'm going to reply, I want to push my pawns in the center as well. So now you push your pawn up 1 square. I push my pawn here. And now you push this pawn to connect your pawns together. And I'll keep going. I'll move my knight. So now you move your knight to support this point again. And let's just say I move my knight here. And now again, where do you want to put your bishop? You want to develop this bishop, but which square do you want to go to? Right, because now it attacks this pawn. and your next move will be to castle your king out of the center of the board. So just to give you an example of a couple of random moves, let's say I move my bishop here. Right, and now I'm going to move my knight here. And in this case, because you finished your development and I'm kind of behind, you see I haven't moved the bishop or the king out of the center of the board, you can now bring this knight forward.
Okay.
Because what you're attacking this pawn, but there's also another idea as well, which is that let's say I move my knight here, you can now bring your queen out right away, and you're threatening the checkmate instantly with the queen and the knight.
Yep.
And this is why when you open the game, you normally want to take as much space as you can, because you want to give your bishops as much space as possible at the very start of the game.
This is a great coaching. I really, yeah, that's a great advice.
So that's the main thing I would say with this game, is that when you play it like this, your bishop ends up getting stuck.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the space. It doesn't have the right squares to go to. So you want to try and open up both in front of the king and queen as much as you can, so your bishops can go as far as they want to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You want to take one more? I feel like.
Sure. Yeah, we can do one more. Yeah, absolutely.
One
yeah,
more?
let's do one more.
Let's do one more. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see how much I improved. I feel like I'm always learning more and more. I feel like, I feel like I have to. Yeah. Let's see. Should I be black? Sure.
Right. So with black, it's a little bit harder because normally you can't get the space right away. But remember, you want to play and get space in the center.
I want to try something different. And you tell me if it's bad until later on.
Sure.
I'm gonna try something different, and yeah.
That's fine. Yeah. Go ahead.
This happened so fast. Like I ordered. Okay. This is just me. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So you violated a basic principle in the opening, which I'll tell you about afterwards.
Okay. Interesting. This is an awful setup. Okay, you live and learn. You can only better yourself, and that's the.
Yeah, it's this is why it's important, like with the basic strategy, that like it's very hard to do something that doesn't follow it at the start, because normally when you do something that's a little bit too different, you can end up in trouble immediately before the action really starts.
Yeah, like I just did. I just screwed the game right in the beginning.
Yeah. It's a good move.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay.
So, okay, let me just pull up this board 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think they're just invite.
No,
There are a couple basic things in this one, and this I think is very important specifically to this game.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. Here.
Right. So one thing to remember, and this doesn't matter if you're playing with white or with black, you almost never want to push this pawn to the left of your king. Okay. So for example, even in this position, if you push pawns on this side of the board, it's not a big deal because your king is never open. But very often when you push this pawn, you normally want to put a knight here because now what can happen? Because now what can happen is it's very hard to develop your bishop and your knight because the basic thing you want to do is bring the knight, bring the bishop, get the king out of the center. But when you push this pawn, it's very hard because you're gonna have to take extra time to bring the knight out. And very often, like let's say you were to not blunder and you take this pawn, I can now push the pawn. Your king is very, very weak here because I'm threatening to take this pawn and attack like this, and your knight's not out, and your king can never really castle. So it's very important that at the start of the game you do not push this pawn to the right of your king. Like you definitely don't want to do this. That's like almost universal. Just never push that pawn that's next to your king at the start. Once your king is castled or out of the center of the board, you can push this pawn, but you never want to push it at the start. That's just it's very, very important that you don't do that. Probably even I'm trying to think of a spot where you can do it, but just in general, don't do that. What I would recommend against a setup like this is to bring your knight out. Let's say I push this pawn, and then you push this pawn here, so that you can develop your bishop and get your king out of the center of the board right away. Because actually pretty much universally in almost all openings where white pushes this pawn or this pawn in front of the queen and the king, at some point you want to put a knight on this square. You never want to push this pawn forward 1 square.
Okay.
So that's the main thing that I would say for this game is you just never push this pawn. Always try to put a knight here and develop your bishop and get the king out. And on the other side of the board, if you want to push like a pawn, there's no issue, but just not the one next to the king. This just never push this pawn.
All right, all right, all right.
It's the most important thing. So,
Yep.
yeah.
All right.
All right.
One more.
Sure. Yeah. Why not? Yeah. Of course.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm excited. Yeah, actually, I'm really trying to gather in, as much information as I can, and I feel like I'm learning. This is great. You're explaining it very well.
Mhm.
Uh, would it like is there a preference if you push the pawn next to the king or the queen first?
Both of them are very,
Like
very good. They're both completely fine. I would say probably as more of a beginner, pushing the pawn in front of the king is a little bit easier to play than pushing the pawn in front of the queen. But both moves are completely fine
okay, so for a beginner, you would recommend to push the pawn
in front of the king. Yeah,
in
two
front.
squares.
Okay, okay, okay. I'm gonna just listen and learn.
Okay, so now I'm gonna
Try,
play.
try.
I'll play a different setup this time. Okay. Very good. Yeah, so you want to keep developing the piece as much as you can.
Mhm.
Very good. Okay, now I will just castle my king. Okay. Okay, so now I'll push this pawn. Hmm? Right, now the one again, see if there's anything under attack or if you can develop your pieces. I think is really the main thing. Because now everything is developed, more or less. So is there a way that you can try to advance the pawn in the center? Because right now I'm attacking your pawn next to the rook with my queen, right?
with your queen.
Right, I'm attacking this pawn next to your rook. So is there a way that you can maybe push a pawn forward to stop my attack, but then also try to push your pawns forward in the center? Oh, okay. All right, let's move my queen back. Very good move. Wow, that's a very good move.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, this is also how when I talk about people who are new to the game, like seeing this pattern that you're seeing here is a pattern that most people who are in this Twitch tournament that's going on right now would not see. Probably 3/4 of the players, like 12 out of 16, would not see the idea right off without having been shown specifically this idea. And the fact that you already see this is very, very good.
Well, that's awesome.
Because now I think the next move I think you see to try and attack towards my king, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, so you took with a knight here. Normally, what you would want to do is take with the queen, to try and remove my king, because now I can actually move my queen back.
Mm-hmm.
So right, so because you're behind here by one pawn, normally when you're behind, you don't want to make like an exchange with the queens or the rooks. Normally, you just want to keep those pieces on the board because they're the most powerful forces that you have. So it's very
Mm-hmm.
good that you didn't take my queen there.
Yep. Yep. Okay.
Hmm? Very good move. Yeah, this is a very good move to try and open up the position. I like this.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's actually hard for me to criticize your moves because they're just very good, and they're ideas that like they're fairly advanced. Like you're seeing try to open up the queen and open up the bishop here. This is very good.
Okay, okay. Hmm.
Okay, good move. So now, if you remember earlier, I said something about a rook lift. So it was where you like bring the rook and you try to shift it over to one of the sides. So can you bring your rook somewhere where you can then maybe shift it over to attack my king? Very good, very good. Okay. So now, one thing, if you look at the position, I'm still ahead by one pawn, but most of my pieces are off towards one side, which is not near my king. So normally, when your opponent only has like one or two pieces near their king, you want to try to attack the king somehow. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious if you can see a way to try to open up the position where my king is, like my king and queen are.
Would it be a good move to try to get this rock into the game?
Yeah. So what you would want to do here is either bring the rook over to support your rook on this open line. It's probably the best move here. It's what I'd recommend, just because I'll give you an idea once you do that. So I'm just going to bring my rook here. So now, as I was saying before, you see my king and queen. They're protected by these pawns, but there are no other pieces that are near the king. So I'm wondering if you can see a way to try to open up the pawns or to attack on that line.
I feel like I would have to sacrifice a player.
So since it's a pawn in front of the queen, you don't really want to make a sacrifice here, but you want to try to open it up because right now the pawns are really protecting the king and the queen very nicely. So if you're not going to make a sacrifice, how would you try to get rid of this pawn? If you're not going to give up a bishop or a rook for it, what is the one piece that's even to a pawn? So okay, so pawns are even. So what you want to do is you want to try to get rid of the pawn in front of my queen. So which pawn can you push to try to get rid of this pawn?
Out of my pawns, I mean, I would
Right. So at this point you're behind, but you want to attack because I only have the queen in front of the king. So you want to attack here, but you don't want to give up material. Right. Yeah, this is a very good move. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
well, basically lost the game there.
Yeah, you were actually winning the game. You're actually winning there at that point before you gave the queen.
Slightly mistaken. You mess it up.
Yeah.
You know, this is what I love about the game. You think you have it, but you just miss one tiny bit, and bam, you're out.
Right, and it just goes the other way completely. Right, you go from like winning, and then that one move. I mean, it's just it changed it from a win to a loss. This is true.
Uh, yeah, definitely. That's a draw. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Okay, so I guess let's take one look at this game. Then let me pull it up again. You played very well there, though. That game you played well. I think the thing is just you have to remember when you're behind or when your opponent doesn't have much protection around the king, you need to attack.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is great though. I feel like I'm learning a lot. I try to not look at the chat as much because I feel like my chat is sometimes telling me what to do, and I don't want to I want to play by myself.
Right. Yeah. I think in general it's best to ignore the chat because then
Yes.
yeah. Okay. So right. So just to look at this one as well. Okay. So you played e4. You did this. Again, in this position, it's the same concept as before, where you don't want to lock in the bishop. So when you push the pawn, you see how the bishop gets stuck behind the pawns again?
Uh-huh.
So the way that you want to play this is you actually want to push your pawn 2 squares forward.
I was actually thinking about that, but then I just didn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know, it can look dangerous because, like, okay, I have knight and a pawn. Maybe you're going to lose something. But basically, it's the same thing. So you want to do this because now when let's just say I push this pawn, you can develop your bishop to this square, and you can castle your king out of the center of the board, and your bishop is very active. It's very, very developed. Whereas in the game, when you push this pawn forward, the bishop gets behind the pawns again. So now I went here and here, and again, like I did a different setup with the bishop. My bishop actually has this long diagonal down towards the rook, so the bishop my bishop is very good here. So you blocked it. We developed. This was a good move. I castled. You played queen here. So now I played this rook move. I'm kind of curious if you. I mean, other than moving the rook away, let's say I were to move my bishop here. Is there a so when you look at one thing that you have to do a lot in chess as well is look at your opponent's pieces, and which one of the pieces would you say out of the bishops and knights is the best for black here?
I would say best.
Okay, well, it's kind of hard to see right here, but basically this bishop on the dark square, it has a straight line down because there's nothing really in the way. I mean, I have a knight in the way, but it's probably the best piece black has.
Okay.
So what you would actually do here is you can move your bishop here. And I can't keep the bishop on the board because then I'm going to lose my rook. Like if I go here, you take the rook. And a bishop for a rook is very good. So what happens is it's a forced exchange of the bishop for the bishop. But because my bishop is so good, this is exactly what you want to do. So like if I take and you take, this is very good because I no longer have any targets with my bishop. So I actually move my rook here so that if you try to make this forced exchange, I can move my bishop away and there's no longer a rook on the square.
Yep.
So here, this is all pretty normal. And actually what I was going to say in this position is now, if you look at your pieces, they're very well developed. The bishop, the queen, the knight are good. But what you can do here is try to push forward and make more space by pushing this pawn. Because now this isn't under attack. But the idea is, let's say I develop the bishop. You can now take these 2 squares in the center with your pawns. And your bishop has a bunch of squares now. Your bishop is active on this diagonal. So you take the center, but you also create space for your bishop. Anyway, you played this, and you played queen h6, which, by the way, is a fantastic move. So now I take, and actually one thing I would add, just so that you see an actual mating pattern, is if you get this position, how do you make the checkmate? Exactly, and that's a check makes the knight protects the queen. So this is actually, if you play more games, you'll see this theme occur very frequently with a queen and a knight, where you have this checkmate pattern. So I took with the knight, you went here, I went here. And again, in this position, the correct capture would have been to take with the queen. The king has to go away, and now you have this very nice move by pushing this pawn forward 2 squares.
Yeah.
Because you protect your knight, but you attack my knight. So this would have been very good. Anyway, let's just go forward a few more moves. Right, so we reach this position, and one thing is when you look at your opponent's position, especially like here, I'm up 1 pawn as black, but my pieces are not really right around the king here. Like I only have this 1 queen for protection along with the pawns, and very oftentimes when your opponent has pawns kind of in this formation, sort of like triangle type formation, one thing that you can do very often is use your pawns to try and open it up. Try and make an exchange of pawns, or if your opponent doesn't take like I did, you can just capture and you're gaining back the material you were behind. So let me just play a random move like this. If I were to take, what is your next move? Okay, now if you were to play this, I take the pawn with checkmate actually, because the bishop and the queen guard each other. So, so I think I mentioned this earlier. There's a there's like a pin idea here. So you don't take the pawn. Do you see a better move?
I mean, it's either to move the pawn one up or the queen here, or the queen.
So okay, so this is what's called a tactic, and the move is to actually move your rook over here because you stop the checkmate.
Okay.
But more importantly, do you see what happens? I can't save the queen. Because I can't move the queen away because then my king is under attack.
Oh, yeah, of course. This is a great move. Yeah.
So basically, if you get this move in, you win the game. But the reason you're able to force this is because right here, when I've got these pawns, you're able to use your pawns and try to open up everything here and get a direct attack on my king because I only have the queen in front. So that's why I went here. You pushed, and I went here, take, and I went here. And this is again. I don't know if you can see this move. There's also a very good move in this position with the same concept of a pin. So you don't want to trade the queen, and you don't want to take the pawn. Is there another move that you can play here? So look at where my king is and where my queen are in relation to your queen and your rooks.
How about this move?
Yeah, you can play the move on the board.
Is that something?
Oh, rook. No, so if rook e6, I just take the rook with my pawn.
Yeah, of course.
Is there another rook move that you can play here? Okay. So I guess I'll just tell you. The move is actually rook here. Because I can't capture it because my king is under attack.
Oh.
It's a very hard move to see, but it's just one of those things where, like, if you see where the king is, like, it's a very strong move because you attack the queen, and if I capture, you just capture back. Again, I can't capture because the king is in check. So it's a very hard move to find, but if you had found this move, it's actually a winning position for white. So I think the main thing I would say is perhaps if you do some puzzles like these tactical puzzles with some of these sorts of ideas with pins or discover attacks, you'll improve your vision, and if you improve your tactical vision, you'll improve a lot really quickly, because that's one thing I'm seeing is some of the tactical vision. It's good, but if you do some puzzles, I think with the pattern recognition, you'll get much better really quickly.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll definitely practice some puzzles.
Yeah, I think that's maybe the only thing, puzzles and having maybe having some basic opening strategy, but otherwise, like, you're already really, really good at the game. You're definitely not a beginner, so it's really great to see. I had no idea you'd be this good at chess, but it's refreshing to see. It's very impressive.
Yeah. So the chat, they said I wasn't good at all.
No. I mean, they're not being honest. That was very good. I mean, that was extremely good. In general terms, I would say if I compare you to the other streamers I've seen who play chess, literally you're probably like I would say the 5th best. And the other 4 people who I think I would rank higher are people who have played chess for many, many years. I think most of them actually took lessons when they were children too. So it's really great to see, and it's inspiring.
Awesome.
You're not bad at all. They're definitely making jokes because it's impressive.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, man.
Yeah, no problem. So, all right. So I hope you learned something from this, and I mean it's
I actually did learn a lot. It's been great. And you're such a great guy, man. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And I would love to stream again, get some more learn some more, pick your brain a bit more. Even
Yeah.
though you're talking most of the time, and I'm just listening. I'm trying to take everything that you say and just soak it in, soak it in, soak it in. And I feel like I'm getting a bit better piece by piece. I'm definitely gonna work on my puzzle game, trying to see these games. See
Yeah.
and work on my opening game as well.
Yeah.
That's my goal now.
No, it's great to hear, and yeah, just this was a pleasure. I'd love to do it again sometime with you.
Definitely, definitely.
All right. Well, I hope you learned
Awesome, my
a lot,
friends.
and yeah.
I learned a lot, man. This has been awesome. It's been awesome, and thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'm here to help, so I'm glad you enjoyed it, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you keep improving and just having fun with the game. So I'm sure we'll do this again soon.
Definitely, let's do it again soon, my friend.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your
Thank you, my
evening.
friend. You too, man. Bye
All right.
bye.
Bye.